right. Hello, I'm Meryl Hathaway, and today our guest is Rand Fishkin, co-founder and CEO of SparkToro, software that makes market research accessible to everyone. He's also the author of Lost and Founder, a painfully honest field guide to the startup world. He previously founded and led Moz from 2001 to 2017 based on the success of the blog he and his mother created, which quickly became the most popular community and content resource for search marketers. He's been profiled in the Seattle Times, featured in Puget Sound Business Journals, 40 Under 40, named a BusinessWeek's 30 Under 30, written about in Newsweek, The Next Web, the Inc. 500, to which Moz was named 5 years in a row, and hundreds of other publications. He's a frequent keynote speaker on marketing and entrepreneurship, and may be best known for his popular blogs and regular Whiteboard Friday series watched by tens of thousands of marketers each week. I'm delighted to welcome Rand to the show. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Meryl. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into our first segment on the show called Getting to Know You. Just a series of this or that questions. Don't think too hard. It's Friday. Just be easy on yourself. It's one or the other. Number one, tablet or laptop?
Laptop.
I agree. Number two, coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee right here.
I see that.
Black stuff.
That's a full cup. Instagram or TikTok?
Ooh, I use Instagram more, but I appreciate TikTok.
Yeah, I like that. I can appreciate that one. I don't use it, but I can appreciate it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is there's a lot of old people who kind of crap on TikTok or Instagram or both, and I don't want to be one of those people.
Fair enough. Full beard and mustache or just a goatee?
I think I prefer the full beard. I have done the goatee and mustache. In fact, I think my profile picture for a lot of events and stuff is that. But nope, I'm going full beard. It's also a lot less work to try and shave around it all.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I wish that I had access to, was like being able to play with the fun of facial hair, because you guys really do get to like create a whole situation there that we don't get options for that. It's not fair.
It's true. Well, and I will say this. I feel like, American masculinity has not embraced a lot of fashion, but American femininity has. And so I have jealousy of that as well. I feel like, women get to sort of acceptably in society do a lot more fashion experimentation and change up their looks and all that kind of stuff. And guys, it's sort of like, well, you have your t-shirt or your dress shirt and you have your jeans, and that is what you're allowed to wear. So I'm a little funny like that. I also think, look, there's tremendous amounts of problems with the way that society views our visual appearances.
Very true.
Anyway, and far more problems for women than men. So I don't have jealousy there, but I do have empathy.
Thank you for that. All right, Netflix or YouTube?
Ooh, boy, I'm half of both. I'll lean Netflix for entertainment.
I like it. Yep. Most people, I think, lean towards
YouTube sort of learning for me.
Yes, almost everyone has a very similar response. YouTube for learning, Netflix for chilling. I agree. I like it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, lastly, this is a funny one. Oprah or Ellen?
Okay, I'm going to say a thing, and we don't have to follow up or dive deep on it. So I was on the Oprah show once. And with Geraldine, with my wife, and it was pretty fun. And she flew us out to Chicago, and we got to go to the art museum there and had a terrific time. So I'm going to say Oprah.
I love it. Also, I know that story. I'm excited you mentioned it, and I just had to make sure we touched on it ever so briefly. So thank you.
Oh, Meryl, you just worming your way in. You did your research. Look at you.
I mean, anyone who's been on Oprah has to mention it at all times, so that's fine.
No, I don't think that's true. I try and keep it as quiet as I can.
I think it should always come up. Moving on to our...
She's very professional. I'll say this about her. She is extremely professional. Like, my experience with her was basically all business.
Wow. Well, I'm still excited that I'm only 1 degree away now. It's very humbling to me. So speaking of humble, let's get right into humble beginnings. So please, Rand, tell us, what was your very first job ever?
Ooh, I think I had 2 jobs in college. One of them where, we talked about fashion. I was selling men's clothes at a men's clothing store in downtown Seattle for a couple of years, but they only ever needed me like 1 or 2 days a week, so it wasn't a ton. And I was doing web design and development kind of at the same time on contract, and I ended up building their website, this men's clothing store. And then simultaneous to that, I also worked at the Wizards of the Coast Game Center in the University District of Seattle. Wizards of the Coast makes like Pokemon cards, for kids, and a bunch of other things. I think they bought the company that makes Dungeons and Dragons, and they make like Magic cards. They make a whole bunch of games stuff. But the Pokemon cards were very important to my early career because in most of the United States, you could not get these cards. So we could buy them with employee discount and then resell them on Craigslist and eBay for a huge markup.
Wow.
And so in whatever summer that was, maybe that was the summer of like 1999 or 2000, something like that, my roommate and I, we both worked at this Wizards of the Coast, and we essentially would buy a ton of cards, resell them online, and we made enough to pay our rent for like a whole year. And so then everything else was gravy.
Wow.
It's kind of great.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Rent by
Crazy,
way
right?
of Pokemon cards. That's like the dream. Okay.
Now, granted, I mean, Seattle rent in the year 2000 was nothing like Seattle rent today. I think we were splitting for a $900 a month apartment. So, $450 times 12, it's not that much money, but felt to us, we felt like kings of the world. We were like, oh my God, this is amazing. My roommate did it for way longer. I think he bought a fancy car, a convertible. I think it was a Mustang or something. It was like a used Mustang that he bought for, with his winnings. Wild.
I'm blown away. That's amazing. I really, it's one of those things that, you always wonder how would that even be possible? Well, that is such a cool, what a cool first thing, but also just that you guys were able to come together and do it together. And also, I mean, the amount of people that were really into Pokemon. I never played any of those types of games, or had collections like that. But you know what I mean, every time I think of something like Pokemon, you know what it reminds me of, which is not the same thing. And I'm not saying that it's the same thing, but do you remember the Garbage Pail Kids cards?
How is that not the same thing? It's the same thing.
Those things were so crazy. They had just like babies with sludge coming out of their mouths, and they were all wounded and bleeding, and who came up with those cards? And so many of us had them. We're like, oh yeah, do you have the gnarly guy with his head chopped off? What was that about? That's so crazy, and not nearly as okay as being a Pokemon card collector.
It is very strange what was marketed to kids in the 80s and 90s as acceptable, and parents were like, oh yeah, he's got blood oozing out of his chest, sure, here you go, kid, enjoy, you're 6 years old, you'll get it.
Exactly. What were we? Wow. Anyway, that's really cool. I love it. So all the way from selling the Pokemon cards and making your rent that way. How did you end up in the world that you're in now? Like, what was that journey like? And obviously, you don't have to touch on every single moment of it, but how did you kind of come into this space and then get to where you are today?
Yeah. So, gosh, long story, but I'll try and shorten it to just the important bits. So I dropped out of college. I started working with my mom more full time, Jillian. I mentioned that I was like building websites, and she had been running a small business marketing consultancy, helping people with like letterhead and logo, yellow page ads, right? Back in the 80s and 90s, this was the way to do marketing before the internet. And so her clients started needing websites, and I like building websites. So we got into that work, but we were terrible at it. Like we picked bad clients, people who didn't pay. We dug ourselves deep into debt. We bought fancy office space because we thought that was needed to try and, I don't know, impress new clients or something. Just kind of a really, really bad decisions all along the way. And so we found ourselves deep in debt, probably 2003, 4. And then we stopped being able to make the minimum payments on the debt. And Meryl, I don't know if you've ever stopped making the minimum payments on your credit card, but
The answer is yes.
Oh man.
Yep.
They get real mad. So, I had just weird crap. I wrote about it in Lost and Founder a little bit, like debt collectors literally coming after me, big dudes, gold chains, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. And so from that experience, one of the only good things that happened was we stopped being able to pay our subcontractors who did SEO, search engine optimization. This is like, how do I get my website ranked well in Google and all that? And at the time, Google and Yahoo and Ask Jeeves, if anybody remembers them, and MSN search, right? So the only good part was I had to do that work myself. And as I started doing SEO and learning it, I started blogging about it. I started this blog called SEO Moz, which later became Moz. And that blog kind of took off after a year or two, brought us a lot of clients. We were able to repay our debts. My mom would call up these old credit card companies or whatever and be like, hey, we owe you 50 grand, but the initial principal was only 10 grand. How about we give you 15? Most of them said yes. And so now for years, for like a decade, I could not buy a car or a house or like get a credit card because my credit history was ruined. But yeah, eventually dug out from under that. So this blog brought us a lot of clients. We switched over to making software in 2007. So we had this idea that maybe people would want to use the same tools we were using. We made them public. You could subscribe to them. You could like PayPal us $29 a month. We had no idea what software as a service was. We didn't understand subscription revenue, none of this stuff. We were the least savvy entrepreneurs in the tech world, but that business started taking off 6 months into the software business because we had tons of people coming to the blog who were interested in what we were writing about. We got a ton of subscribers. We had as much revenue coming from the subscription side of the business as the consulting side. And we went, oh, wait a minute. I think we're onto something. And that's when, usually in venture capital world, you go pitch VCs, right? Like whatever. But in this case, VCs came to us and said, hey, do you want to raise some money for this? This looks really exciting. I did. I was pissed off at Google for taking away some data. And I was like, hey, maybe we could rebuild the back end of Google, basically the link graph where they crawl all the websites on the internet and show what links to what. So they had previously shown that data. They took it away. And I was like, we're going to bring it back. And so we raised some money, hired some engineers, some great folks, and they ended up being able to do this. And the company had, 7 years of like 100% year over year growth to $30 million in revenue. And then I had yeah, kind of a rough bout with depression at the end of my tenure as CEO. I ended up stepping down. I stayed with the company a few more years. Unfortunately, had a lot of disagreements with management, and growth sort of plateaued.
Mm-hmm.
Moz encountered a lot more headwinds, challenges, just struggled. And I left the company in 2018, and started SparkToro the next day. Um, so
Wow.
yeah. So SparkToro is not in SEO. It's in sort of market research and audience intelligence. And it helps people understand where their audiences pay attention online and that sort of stuff. That business, we took about 2 years to develop, and then we launched it almost exactly a year ago, and it's going really well. It's just the two of us. It's me and my co-founder Casey. It's really weird to go from like 200-person startup, and I have an executive assistant and whatever, a huge salary, I don't know, $200,000 a year. That sounds big to me. And
Yeah.
I'm working, I built a $50 million a year business and all this kind of stuff. And then it's back down to, well, you have no revenue, no employees, no customers, like go figure it out. But it's exciting. It's fun to sort of start from scratch again and just have to rely on our own ability to do this work. I think, I don't know, Meryl, I kind of had to prove to myself that I could do it again.
Well, I have no doubt that you already are doing it again. That entire background of understanding where you are today is so full of inspiration in so many different ways. And I really want to touch on the fact that what is the biggest thing? Here's what I want to tap into first. What's the biggest thing that you learned? Because from being in the debt that you guys were in, and then being able to get out of it. Because the thing that a lot of people are dealing with is debt, right? In all different types of ways. So as business owners, as entrepreneurs, then the personal debt, student loan debt, all the different parts of it that can factor into being able to find success and the different ways of doing that. And there are a lot of people that are in that very stuck, sort of scary phase where the guys with the chains are coming to their house. So I would just love to know, having gotten through it the way you guys did is so exciting to hear about. What do you feel like is the biggest thing that you sort of took away from that specifically that you still kind of apply now?
Man, so I think there's kind of these two divergent philosophies in I don't know, sort of American society and politics. And one of them is, I went through this hard thing, which means you can do it too. And you should, whatever, be scrappy and hustle like I did and have to work hard in order to earn your way out of it. And the other one is, I went through this hard thing, and I don't think anyone should have to go through that hard thing again. Mm-hmm. I want to change the system so that it is easier for everyone coming up behind me. And that, I'm in the latter group. Like, I don't think that debt is the way we do debt, especially in the US, is a healthy way for us to build a society. I think it creates a lot of income inequality and wealth inequality. I think that's bad for everybody. Even the super wealthy people could be richer if everybody else in society had more money. And it's either that they don't understand it, or they'd rather be further away than, just higher up. And that doesn't make any sense to me. So, my big takeaway from like a lot of the experiences of whatever struggle and hardship and trying to make things work. And we had to hide the debt. I didn't mention this, but we had to hide the debt from my dad because just all sorts of complexity around my parents' relationship. And I don't know. And Meryl, like today, I don't really have a relationship with my parents much. I don't know. It's hard and sad, and this stuff is ugly. Like, this stuff is so messed up. And so what I would like to see, what I want to contribute to in the future is I want to help in whatever ways I can. Look, I'm just some, entrepreneur in his shed in his backyard, right? But I want to try and make it easier for more people to build their careers, their companies, their projects, whatever they can, and not have to struggle the way we did. And that means, a number of practical things, right? That means helping people do good marketing, which I hope our software does, and offering some of that for free. That means helping and mentoring as many people as I can and advising them and connecting them with good people and all of that kind of stuff on a one-to-one basis. And I think it means trying to change the way startups are funded. So we don't have, in my opinion, we don't have enough options for how you can get a business off the ground. And a lot of the debt options are just not the way to go, right? You should not credit card fund this stuff. SBA loans, bank loans are not great options. And venture capital is also not the right option for like the vast majority of businesses, small and medium businesses that are going to be slower growth and lower risk, but not billion-dollar unicorns, right? And so there's just not a lot of funding for those people. That's what I'm trying to change. So SparkToro is funded in this very unique way. And I hope we've open sourced our funding documents. A few other startups have used them. We basically raise money from individuals, people who, own their own agency. In many cases, we're their first and only investment. They've never invested before. And the idea is that with slow, steady, long surviving growth, we can be a better investment for them than most venture style startups, and potentially, hopefully, the public markets too. So that's my goal. Give investors a chance to fund the small businesses that we want to see in the world, and give small businesses a chance to get the money that they need to get off the ground.
Yeah. Oh, wow. All of that is so powerful. And I love your honesty, because it can all be such a tricky road. And there's so many sort of pitfalls that are possible, but also all these ways that things can work out. And I think when I hear you speak, I just hear so much like longing to support people, which is so what's cool about SparkToro, and your goal with it is really to be able to actually help people in ways to succeed that make sense to avoid different issues that can come up. And I wonder, one of the things I did want to ask you as well was just with your blog, because I know that you continue writing blog posts as a part of what you're sort of contributing to. And is that sort of what the idea is to be able to keep lending your knowledge and your expertise from everything that you've already sort of been through to then, highlight the different ways for other people to take from that and like jump ahead?
Yeah. I mean, when I create content, I always try and think of who it's helping, right? Like, who is this going to be really useful for? Whose whatever professional, personal life is going to benefit from this? And that's a big focus for my content creation side of things. So it's funny, I blog much less than I used to. It's probably once every week or two instead of, in the early days of Moz, I was blogging 5 nights a week. Wow. But my intention is, hey, let me find some issue that's really pressing with a lot of need around it. And perhaps there's nothing, I can't find anything through Google that really solves this problem. Well, I'll create it myself, right? That's sort of my philosophy around creation.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because sometimes also when I feel like everybody or so many people have to focus on creating content and having to get things up and make sure that they're on top of it. And it can get so, tedious to be like, okay, well, what else can I put out there? Yeah. And sometimes when you do it less, your content ends up being so much better because it has so much more of those like real nuggets of powerful information rather than sort of just kind of trying to keep stringing little ideas into bigger pieces of content that don't necessarily have to be there. And then when you do it less often, you're giving almost more, as you're doing it. So I think that makes so much sense. And another thing that came up for me that I was curious about is I know that probably within the pandemic time, there weren't any of these sort of speaking engagements, but that I know that you do tend to kind of do speaking engagements and things. And what are some of the things that you like to give to an audience when you're invited to speak on things? Is there sort of one way you kind of approach any kind of sort of group, or is it always really different? I'd just love to touch on that a little bit because it's another really interesting part of what you get to do.
Yeah. So I did do a tremendous amount of speaking and got, relatively good at that. I think, I try to have a fair amount of humility, but I just worked hard with speaking I always wanted to be the top rated speaker at the events that I went to, which is, I don't know, just a weird point of pride. I probably, hopefully I've matured past that at this point. I don't think I need that anymore, but I would say that that approach works actually pretty darn well, translates pretty darn well to webinars and live streams and video and podcasts. One of the things that I have found that's incredibly effective is to say the quiet part loud, right? So in any given topic, there is something that people don't discuss, that's generally secretive or hidden or shameful. And my experience has been when you just talk about it publicly, people pay attention, right? That is when you really wake folks up. And, when I go up on stage at a marketing conference or something, and I tell people, I have terrible news. You cannot build a competitive advantage for your business on Google and Facebook. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. This is the SEO person. He's supposed to help me he's telling me I can't do, what am I listening to? This is madness, right? And then I explain further and people are kind of like, oh, I get it. All my competitors are also doing that. And it's very expensive. And so, if I want to build return on investment, oh, okay. Now I'm getting it. Or if I get on stage and I, talk about politics, social issues, people are like, whoa, where is he going with this? This guy's going off the rails. We're not supposed to be having these conversations in public, right? I'm not sure I should be hearing about wealth inequality or racial injustice or feminism from, some white dude tech CEO. Like that's not why I came to this. That's not what I was expecting. So I think doing those kinds of things actually has really, it does two things. It turns off some of the audience very quickly, right? They hate it. They walk out, they give you a bad review. And I don't care. Goodbye. I'm done with you, right? Like, it's cool. We don't all have to agree on things. We don't all have to be friends. It's fine. Yeah. But for the people who do resonate with that stuff, or who are at least willing to listen, it can build a tremendous connection, a connection in a way that you just don't get if you go up on stage, whatever, at a tech event and be like, okay, here's my 7 bullet points for what you should do when you're fundraising for your company. It's kind of, yeah, all right, sure. Okay, I've got this advice for pitching these people. And it's dry. You've heard it before. Any other speaker can give you that advice, right? So I try and say the quiet part loud.
I love the way that you're saying that. Yeah, it's and I think that it all comes down to authenticity. When you feel and sense that someone's being truly authentic, even if it's, especially a speaker at a larger conference when you know what to expect for the most part. And that's why when you're saying, oh, and then I come in and I start speaking the quiet part loud and people are like, wait, what? And it can be scary and shocking, but sometimes exactly what you didn't know you needed to hear is what you needed to hear. And when you get it from someone who's being genuine, I just think when I hear people speak their truth, it really, it always goes further than someone just putting on a show. And that's what
Hmm.
I'm hearing a lot of, is that there's no real show there. It's, this is what I know. This is what I believe in. This is what makes sense to me. These are my experiences. And that's what most people really are craving, whether they are aware of it or not. And yes, there's always going to be things people don't want to hear. And that's fine. Walk out. If you're that close-minded that you can't even hear the thing, okay, well, I'm sorry for you. But for the rest of us, it's like, hey, that's where we learn and grow and are able to kind of connect more with people. Because the fact is we're all so much more alike than we are different. But when people have certain things in mind and are not willing to open up, it's like the growth versus the fixed mindset. There's only so much you can do. Someone has to be able to adjust that for themselves, and they're missing out when they don't want to be open-minded to it.
Yeah. Look, you cannot build, in my opinion, a really exciting brand or a really interesting presentation or a wonderful piece of content without taking some sides. And that could be, very apolitical. It could be like, well, the enemy here is Facebook's advertising model. Sure, right? Not a lot of people are, maybe a Facebook ad professional is upset about that, but not a lot of people are upset about that. Or it could be, I am very angry at, the Biden administration for not canceling student loan debt, because I think that's actually a reasonable thing to do. I will say, I personally, I have seen some reasonable arguments against it, but on the whole, I'd probably do it if it were me. So, right, these kinds of things, though, I think having a strong point of view, having passion around that point of view, being able to back up that point of view with the reasons you believe it, and then being able to steel man your own argument, right, where you say, here are the strongest points against what I'm saying, and here's why I believe it anyway. That's something that I really like doing in my talks, and I find that resonates as well. I also have a bunch of we could get into a bunch of tactical tips if we're talking presentation stuff, but I have a whole bunch of little cheat codes that help me, deliver a good talk. But those that kind of philosophical approach of quiet part loud, it really does work, and I think it can. It can make you someone who stands out from the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, clearly you've been able to do that. So it makes a lot of sense that that those things would work. And I would say, I'm sure you have many tactics, but maybe you want to share one of the tactics that you would recommend to someone who's maybe working on a presentation
Sure.
or how to give a talk or thinking of that kind of thing. What's one thing you might suggest?
Yeah. All right. So a lot of people, when they build talks, they basically have, a number of points that they would like to present around a particular topic. Like, I don't know, Meryl, you're giving a talk on podcast recordings and how to present them, right? And so you're like, hey, when you're creating the podcast at the end of the production, you will want to do these things, right? It's sort of audio sync, and we want to create a videogram, and we want to do captioning, and we want to make sure that the captions are published on the webpage so that Google can index them, yada, yada, yada. Instead of having a single slide with each of those elements on it, split it out into one slide per element that has a visual that shows you. So, for example, instead of, here's what you do at the end of your podcast, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's now let's talk about what goes into the end of post-production of a podcast. Number 1, and then that's its own slide, and you talk about whatever it is, producing the videogram. And number 2 is getting the audio sync. And number 3 is the captioning. And here's who we used for captioning. And here's how we publish it. And number 4 is getting that content indexed by Google. And here's why that's important and how it works for us. And number 5 is some of the results. And, you show a slide with some analytics. Splitting those out into multiple slides and moving quickly through them rather than having one visual that you stay on for a long period of time, it works really, really well. And
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And you can mix it up too, right? So if you have a story that you're going to tell over 90 seconds, you can leave one sort of, visual up that is not particularly engaging, there's not a lot of text or whatever, tell that story, and then you move quickly through many other sides, varying that up, that will keep people engaged. If you think about a great TV show or great movie, it's not all action sequences and all downtime, right? It's, you mix it up.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because visuals, I'm a visual learner too. So I love when people are speaking and they have slides that move to kind of represent the different topics, not even topics, but the different sort of beats of what they're talking about. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah. And I think it, because it does allow your brain to sort of go, okay, oh yes, this, oh, and now, okay, this. But when you have just one thing with like a list and then they're just speaking over that list the whole time, it's a lot less engaging for sure. And then I think it doesn't sit in your brain for as long or as well. And so, yeah, I love that. That makes a lot of sense to utilize. So how do you feel a year in to SparkToro? I mean, it's so fun, like, to touch base at this time where it's still relatively new, like you were saying. And so a year in, how are you and Casey feeling in your bodies about how it's going?
Every day different.
Yeah, that's something that I think everyone can relate to.
Right. Like,
yeah,
I can't put my finger on exactly why, but that, there's whatever, a week where we have a really good week and, whatever, sales are up and things look great. And we're like, oh man, this is going so good, going so great. Like this week is going gangbusters. We're just having an incredible week. We've had 2 or 3 incredible weeks, but I'll tell you, at the end of May, like the second to last week of May, I was feeling the absolute opposite. I was like, oh, the past 3 weeks, it just hasn't gone well. And what's going on? And why isn't this working? Man, are we going to be able to, hit our metrics that we want to hit for this year? I don't know. Casey and I had a fun conversation, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or something. He calls me up and he was like, it's just I'm going over it in my head over and over again. And I can't figure out what we're doing. I was like, yeah, man, a huge part of being an entrepreneur, especially in these early stages, is managing your own psychology. And Casey says, I hate it. I don't want to do that. There you go.
It's true. Psychology comes in at all times. And, you had mentioned earlier that there was a bout of depression there. I think so many people are dealing with the realities of mental health struggles. There's not a single person that I know who has not had to do a lot of extra work around their mental health as of late, especially obviously due to the pandemic. But, it's just, I love being able to bring it up, even in the conversation around, marketing, digital marketing, all of it. It's mental health is something that everyone needs to pay attention to. And it's very easy to get sort of sucked into different ways that society tells us how to feel. And what I'm excited about is that someone like you references something like depression or mental health, because the more that we all talk about it, the more that we can all relate to each other about how challenging different things can be, and also giving each other a break. I think something you had said earlier was sort of just this this need for people to sort of go. And, we all know that the 40-hour work week for many people is actually a 60-hour work week or a 70-hour work week or what have you. And that the balance that we all really truly need, some people were able to get that for the first time when it came to the pandemic and working at home. And, I consider myself a very efficient, diligent worker. And I feel for myself that for some people that it would take 4 hours to get something done, I'm done in 45 minutes or an hour, because I think about things a little differently. And it's not like a, humble brag. It's more, everybody works really differently. And the thing is, people's brains work really differently, and their need for things are very, very different. So some people need to work less hours while they work very diligently, efficiently, and hard, but they need more time away from work as well. And I think that's something that that I really related to. I don't remember if it was even right before we started recording or not, but go ahead.
No, I'm exactly the same way, Meryl. I'll have days where if I've taken, a weekend off and like a little vacation. If I, if I go inside my house and like play video games for 2 hours, then I can come back to my computer and get done in 45 minutes what would have otherwise taken me 4 hours, 5 hours of just staring at the screen, trying to force my brain to focus. I just work better when I've had that break. And
Yeah.
you have to learn this about yourself, right? Some people, look, there's a very small percent of people who can go, even in sort of high intellectual complexity tasks that require code switching, and they can do it all day, every day. Great. That's wonderful for them. And, F you if you're trying to force that on everyone else who can't do it. It's not okay, right? That is not okay. Just because it works for you doesn't mean you get to inflict that expectation on everyone else around you. People get to be different. We are not valued by our work, right? Human beings are valuable and worth being kind to, regardless of how hard and how much they can work, and on what. And so I think what's crucially important here is that you figure that out for yourself, and then you insist that your job, your employers, the tasks that you assign yourself, if you're self-employed or working on your own projects, like, be kind to you. There's so many people who, I think, thanks to the pressures of society and whatever, the way they were raised, what they expect, they think they're supposed to be someone that they constantly struggle to be, and that's why so many of their working years are miserable. I wish we could be kinder to each other.
I couldn't agree more. And I really relate to so much you just said. On a personal note, I very much have always been a hustler, as I've always called it. I've worked in freelance my entire adult career. And I feel like I was doing it way before I was even out in the world myself. And I did think that all of my value was in how successful I was and how much money I could make. And I'll tell you, when you hit the sort of rock bottom of, all the things that I was doing really well, or the money that I was making that was great, sort of can go away, because it can in all different ways.
Yeah.
So many people either lose a job or aren't able to do the job that they were doing before, or, so many people are pivoting since the pandemic, and, things happen. And the thing is that I love that you said is that we're all inherently so valuable and we're amazing as we are. And just because you have the $200,000 a year job does not make you better than the person who's making barely squeaking by 30 grand a year. It just means that you're in different places within what you're doing. But the fact that so many of us are taught and have been raised to think that our value is in that success, and that what is success, I've had to actually really look at my own definition of success and recognize that it was bonkers, off the wall, not fair to myself to have what I did have as that marker. And then I think when, any individual can sit with really reckoning on what those definitions are or what their needs really are, it can be really difficult then to figure out, how do you then make your life form in that way that you need it to work for you, which is why I think that someone like you is a great person to kind of indicate to the people who are at the top of companies or creating companies. Everyone needs a wellness program. Everyone needs to be checking in with their employees and themselves about work-life balance, about stress levels, about, are you sleeping well? If you're not sleeping well and you're working a 9.5, 10-hour day, how much are you really getting done? Or do you need to be working that much? Or are you working that much because your stress level is high and you're not sleeping? Like, there's so many different things. And I think what's cool about a lot of the people coming up is a lot of startups in a lot of different places are integrating wellness programs because they understand that their staff need more than just, hey, this is the deadline. Hey, these are the projects we're working on. It needs to be more, hey, how are you? Are you doing okay today? Are you doing well this week? And the pandemic, I think, has been hopefully a good wake-up call for a lot of different powerful companies in marketing, tech, what have you, who can all recognize like, hey, we need to be taking care of each other in a way that we maybe weren't before. And we can now, because now we can see a lot better what people need. And hopefully a lot of employees and different people are willing and feel safe enough to kind of share what those needs are. And I think if we all did that kindness would just be a part of that whole different way of being. So it's about creating it where you are and, hoping that it spreads. And so anyone listening who is in charge of staff, remember to check in. Like, how are they doing as people? How are they doing at home? What are their needs at work? And not just what data do you need? What do you need to succeed, to feel comfortable?
So I have my philosophy on this might be a little different, but I think that most of the problem comes not from the, hey, you need to check in and see if your employees are doing well, but are you being reasonable with the work that you are assigning?
Yeah.
Are you creating an environment where people can be successful by working as little as possible on the things that matter the most, that will actually move the needle?
Right.
And I think a ton of employers have this foolhardy belief in sort of, checklist task accomplishment. I want you to work many hours on these many tasks and only 2 or 3 of them really matter to the business. I hate that crap. Like, stop it. What are you doing? There's so many people who believe like, I need my workers at their desks or like on the job. No, you don't. What you need are things accomplished that move the needle for the business and to throw out all the other crap. And when you do that, your efficiency and quality of life for your team and the results that you get from your business will all go up.
Agreed.
And you just got to change. You have to change this like freaking 19th century capitalist, idea of I need workers at my factory to like be putting things on the line. That is not how the information economy works.
Yeah.
It's not.
I love
your
that.
team, just like you, they will do better with 4-hour workdays than 8-hour workdays many times. So look, sometimes there's a crunch, sure. Most of the time there isn't.
Yes.
Most of the time you are inflicting busy work and checklists on people, and it's not useful for you or your company, and you gotta change it. That's on you, owners, CEOs, leadership teams.
Amen.
Not on them.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I hope people hear that. And I hope that we can make sure we keep spreading the message, because I think it's super important and hopefully it can change some things. So all that being said, gosh, you're a delight. We're going to jump into our last segment of the show, Rand, called Branded, where we just throw some fun numbers. I get to say the word percentage, which is fun for me. So I'm just going to ask you 3 multiple choice questions. You can get them wrong and nobody will punish you in any way. You win no matter what happens. But it's just some interesting stuff that's sort of around like marketing statistics and stuff that I think are kind of interesting. So number 1.
Fun.
What percentage of marketers rank lead generation as their number 1 challenge? So the percentage of marketers who rank lead generation as their number 1 challenge, is it A, 39% of marketers, B, 61% of marketers, or C, 25% of marketers?
I want to say A, 39.
It's actually 61, if you can believe it.
61.
Can you believe that? Yeah. But you know what? The second most at 39% is proving that the ROI of the marketing activities are working, which I thought was really interesting too. But that surprised me that it was so high. Yeah, that was their number 1 challenge is the lead generation. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. All right, number 2. What day of the week is typically the day with the highest click-through rate potential? At 2.7%. This is interesting to me because I would never know how to guess this.
Click-through rate for emails?
Yeah, through click-through rate potential for emails. Yeah, so 20 at 2.7%. Is it Monday, Wednesday, or Friday?
Oh man, I was going to guess Tuesday. Let's
So
go with
I
Wednesday.
thought that it was going to be, I thought it was Wednesday. It's Friday, which I was like, wait a minute, but everybody's
Friday.
checked out on a Friday. And then again, then I was like, but wait a minute. I was thinking about my emails and I was like, okay, I feel like what I end up doing is I think I wait to like open a bunch of stuff anyway. Like I just put it off. And then on Friday, I end up realizing how many unread messages I have and I go through them. And that's when the ones that interest me, I click on. So I was like, well, I guess like when you think about it like that, it kind of makes sense, right? But that surprised me too, because I know that Tuesday is supposed to be the day that a lot of people end up posting on different socials, and that is supposed to be the best day for people to actively be looking, which I know that. So I thought Wednesday too, and it turns out it was Friday, which I was like, wow.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes some reasonable sense, right? Maybe, especially consumer
right. I think
side,
consumer side.
right? I think B2B is a little different, but B2C, I bet I could see Friday
totally
working.
And also it's the kind of thing that I wonder how often this fluctuates, like this information is from HubSpot. I don't know how long it'll stay at Friday. Maybe in another 6 months, it's actually that it goes back to a Tuesday. We have no idea, but I thought that was kind of interesting. And then lastly, what percentage of I get to say percentage again. I love it. What percentage of B2B marketing professionals state that a lack of quality data is their biggest barrier to lead generation? So is it 42% say that it's the lack of quality data is the biggest barrier, 25%, or only 15%?
I think it's low. I think it's only 15%.
Okay, so you're going to be shocked. It's 42, which I was like, wait, what? Because there's so many ways to get quality data. And what the thing I thought right away when I was doing this is I was like, they need you. They don't understand that they have options because they don't invest in the option that will help them to get all of that information. It's like, guys, you can't do it on your own.
Yeah, we just got to get them over to SparkToro. That's
because
right
that
there.
was the thing. It's like, even in, doing all the research and flowing through your website and stuff, I was like, you make it so clear. And, and for anyone who hasn't been on your website, you have a great intro video where you're so clear and explain what you guys do, why it's helpful. It's like 2 minutes long or something. And I was like, this is so clear to me why if I was one of those people that needed this, it makes all the sense in the world because you make it so simple and it's just so clear with this kind of a number, how many people don't realize that something like what you have can alleviate so much of the thing that they're coming up against.
Oh, thank you, Meryl. Yeah, it's funny. We were just talking about redoing that video because we made it before quarantine, right? And now we're like, oh, we should probably update.
Well, if you update it, make it as good as the first one because I really enjoyed it.
Okay, all right.
For little old me,
I got this fancy DSLR camera and this fancy microphone and all that, so I'll try and step it up.
Well, okay. So speaking of which, if all the people listening are like, oh my God, I need SparkToro, how do they find you? Also, how would they reach out about, future webinars or speaking engagements? Like what's the best way for people to actually get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So you can get a free SparkToro account and run a bunch of free searches. I think we're offering, it's like 5 free searches every month. That is at SparkToro.com. And you can kind of play with the product and see if it provides you useful stuff. If you want to get in touch with me, I am Rand at SparkToro.com. So I just take all emails. I try and answer everyone who drops me a line.
Love it. Simple as that. You are so delightful. I honestly, I'm so glad to have had you because I feel like there's so much great information within this conversation. And I wish you guys the absolute best with SparkToro and to keep going with what you're doing. And you've done it before, you're doing it now. And it's really inspiring for so many different people that are trying to be entrepreneurs and create things. So thank you for what you do and for spending your time with me today.
Meryl, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.